Okay, guys, just showing you real quick something that's going on in the world so you can, I don't know, have a different grasp of it than you may be accustomed to. So this is the major market in the United States, the S&P 500, and this is going back to the early 70s. And this is the proof that, the world is mathematically engineered. Is it divine? Why wouldn't it be? So here we have, you can see here, this is what's called a Fibonacci extension, and mathematically you can look up what Fibonacci's are. Basically, everything from an octopus's shell to leaves on a tree, they all follow what's called a Fibonacci sequence. So you can see here that when you draw it back to the beginning of the markets, and early in the 70s is actually arguably when the markets began a new phase, because that's when America went off the gold standard, which allowed, basically a lot of inflation. That's a big topic, but, it's something to be considered in regard to when the market began. So you can see here that in the early 2000s, you see these lines all perfectly intersect. Well, they actually forecast into the future. So for example, if you had drawn this chart, this line chart, you could see, if you'd done it in 2000, you could see that there was going to be resistance all along the way here. And you can see where it happened here, that it perfectly lines up. Perfectly lines up with a peak in 2007. Perfectly lines up with a valley in 2010. Perfectly lines up with a valley in 2015. A high in 2020. And here's something that's most important for you folks to consider, and that's what's happening now. You see this? This is what's called a wick. Now, a wick basically indicates that at some point there was somebody up here who was buying this market. But when you create a wick, which is, think of a candle wick, most of the interest was down here. Now, I want you to look back through the entire last 50 years. Have you ever seen a wick of that size? This wick basically means that there's not enough willingness to buy this market. Much like you see here when we had this big crash that happened here and the quick reversal. And we had little ones here, but nothing ever has been this big. With the exception of here, and this is a big correction. And now we're going to go to the mother of all corrections. Markets move in 5 waves up. So 1, 2 happens back here. You can't see it. This is the 3rd wave here. This is the 4th. And I'm postulating this is the 5th. Now you wonder what these red lines are? These red lines are what are called Fibonacci time extensions. So following the same mathematical premise, we had a top here, we had a top here, we had a top here, and we're coming up to the top again. So as you can see, there are a little bit in, we have a top here, this goes on over a couple of months. So there's a little bit of inaccuracy here as far as measuring that on this month scale. But this looks like, to me, the top of the market, and it looks like we're going to be correcting down to what's called the 200-day average, which is all the way down here. Probably going to go past this point here. Probably going to revisit this part here, and it looks like that'll happen very quickly. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is that markets directly refer to the sentiment of the world. So what's going on in the world right now? We have this Omicron thing coming out. We have lots of riots and things going on. We have a situation where the world in general is in distress. And so, what we have here is basically a representation of what looks like is going to happen. And if you want to see, and I'm basically postulating it's going to hang up here for a bit, and we're going to see some kind of event which is going to cause a big collapse here. And this will be in tandem with problems with the American dollar, and we're actually going to see oil prices really take off again. Now, of course, you've seen some of the news stories about how there's a glut of oil and all that kind of stuff, but markets don't go straight up. You see, they always go up and then they correct, they go up and then they correct. But they also go down very quickly. And you can see the best example of a quick decline is here. You know, we had a 30% loss in less than, well, basically in 1 month. So, you know, there's a thing that says, there's an expression in trading which is markets take the stairway up and they take the elevator down. And you can see that's exactly what's going on here. So, you know, if you're invested in the markets and you've made a lot of money, sometimes people don't know what to do. And it is true, you can just stay in there and say, well, it always goes back up. And, you know, I guess it does. But for example, if you had sold at the top here, in 2000, you actually weren't back at that level for 12 years. Well, you got back to that level and you had to wait 8 years, but really that seems unnecessary. There is a pretty serious argument if you're invested just to moving your resources to cash. Yeah, sure, it could go higher, for sure it could. But, you know, we're dealing with probabilities here. And when you see the combination of this time frame, you're also seeing the combination of this pattern, this wick pattern, which is going to resolve tomorrow because it's the end of the month. And like December 1st, and then what's called the Fibonacci, what's called a fan. It's hitting one of those strategic points. You know, might as well keep your powder dry. You know, for example, this would be a great opportunity to buy if it falls down to here. You know, you can use this chart if you want. Drops down to 3,600, buy. Drops down to 3,000, buy. Drops down to 2,000, buy. You know, there is an argument actually that the market is basically going to go down, 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 up, down, 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 here, here, here. And it will eventually go higher, but probably not for a decade or more. So that's, of course, assuming that the current financial system stays intact, but that's another conversation altogether. So part of your manifested reality is, I don't know, you seeing me talk about this right now, you might preserve your wealth as a result of this conversation. Because make no mistake, you can choose to stay in the market, but there's far more risk that this thing is going to fall down than it's going to go higher. Everyone's gone to Vegas and turned $50 into 300. And then by the time they left the casino, they were down 400. Right? So you can be that guy. Or you can be the guy who, you know, maybe instead of turning that $50 into 300, turns that $50 into 200 and then keeps all the money. But if you cash it right here, you might be the smartest guy in the room. Even if it goes higher, you're still going to be a very smart guy because it's very hard to catch a market top. But I'd be willing to wager that this is a pretty significant market top here. I think it's going to jerk around here just a little bit. You heard it here first. Anyway, feel free to send me a message if you want further clarification. But, you know, add it up. Worldwide stress going on. Stress dealing with crops and agriculture. Stress dealing with wildfires and earth events. Political tension with China and also now with Russia and Ukraine. Political tension in Austria, Holland and Germany. You know, the vaccine stuff, you know, there's just everything sort of coming to a head. And you're going to see some kind of event which is going to happen, which is going to cause this thing just to collapse. So, I don't know, just call your broker up and say, hey man, just move me to cash. You don't have to cash out your RSPs or anything. And this is not investment advice. This is just simply what I would do. Do what you like, but I'm sort of painting a picture that is logical for you to consider. But you can just call up your broker and say, "Hey, just move me all the cash." You don't want to cash your RSPs. You're not going to lose your RSP or your TFSA or even use your investments. You're just transferring where they are. And if nothing happens, that's great. But like everything I told you, it's a good idea to keep some powder dry. Anyway, there it is, guys. Thanks.